everyone, and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is it's a low budget show. Yeah, it's a pretty low budget show. It's actually a show so low that it has no budget. Once again, I am your host with the ghost most, because Halloween? No, I don't know why I'm going with this. I guess because Ghostbusters is on the mind, because it kind of leads into our topic today. And I'm not going to get to our topic yet because I'm super excited to talk about this one. It's actually one that I was going to do regardless of these movies I just saw, but I feel like it's the perfect time, more than ever, to talk about the Requel. And we'll get more into what a Requel is later on in the show, because like with every single episode of the GeekWave, I do like to talk about a little bit of the news up top, and there was not a lot this week. There was a couple of things that I thought were worth mentioning, and I think it's going to be fun discussion, right? Maybe not, but whatever. It's just kind of where I'm at right now. So anything housekeeping? Nope, not really. You know, we got Superman Lois reviews. We got Resident Alien reviews on the horizon. Those are coming strong. I am hoping in the next couple of days we'll be able to do an in-depth discussion again, talk about Multiverse of Madness. We'll see what happens. And until then, we got this, we got that, we got the other stuff, and we got always more on the horizon. Just working myself crazy. How do I have time for this? Who knows? But I'm here. I'm excited about the future, and a lot of news to talk about. Well, I say a lot of news, not that much. The first big thing I guess we could talk about is the sequel in the works to Mortal Kombat. Now, I have recently watched Mortal Kombat again, because who the fuck knows? It's not great. I think I was very lenient on it because I know it's campy, and it's supposed to be campy, but I watched it a second time, and I'm like, no, I just don't like this anymore. It's not a good rewatch. It feels off, and I don't like what it is. But Jeremy Slater, who I guess wrote Moon Knight for some reason, he was the writer on Moon Knight. I knew this, but I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are going to get work again, because Moorhead and, who's the other guy? Oh, the other one in the Moorhead, they made a show, Archive 81. They worked on that. They got the Dirt movie coming out. Oh, I'm rambling again. The Moon Knight guys, they make good. Those guys make good shit. Jeremy Slater made some interesting choices, but he's going to be writing the Mortal Kombat sequel. I couldn't care less about this, mainly because they didn't actually Mortal Kombat in the first one, so it's like, what is the point of this? Why are we trying to make this work again? It's kind of tragic if you ask me. Like, we really messed it up. It's weird because I don't even think the first two movies from the 90s are good, but at least it's Mortal Kombat-esque, where it's like just no plot and something silly. I kind of hope it's a new cast. I know it's a sequel. They said it's a sequel. I really don't want to see Cole. Is his name Cole? Cole Young? He sucked. What a terrible character. They really just nerfed so many people. It just made it so dumb. What a bad movie. Or an awkward film that really accomplished nothing in its time being existing. So a sequel to Mortal Kombat, I guess the numbers on HBO Max were okay enough to get this a sequel. I mean, Dune's getting one. Space Jam isn't, so that should tell you something. Or is Space Jam? Maybe Space Jam will. But I don't want to talk about Mortal Kombat anymore, just because that movie gives me nausea when I think about it. What a weird choice for everything they made in that film. Honestly. But we're moving away from that. We're talking about I fucking love this news. This makes me so happy. So, Grant Gustin, the actor portraying Barry Allen for the past 8 years. Well, 9 years, I guess he was on Arrow before he got his show. Guess what? Grant Gustin, the last holdover of that classic era. You know, Stephen Amell's gone. Melissa Benoist is gone. Ruby Rose is gone. Brandon Routh is gone too, surprisingly. Yeah, he left Legends. Katie Lutz is kind of like a mid one, I guess. Interesting stuff, man. Weird. So, Grant Gustin, the last holdover of a weird era of the CW television. He has signed on. He has signed on a new contract for a 9th season of The Flash. Which, if anybody's still watching The Flash, I know I haven't watched it in years. Anyone's still watching The Flash, it's pretty much taken a train wreck of a turn, and it's become pretty trashy. I've seen clips and people share stuff about what the modern seasons look like. It does not look good. But I feel really good for Grant for having the balls pretty much to say, okay, I'll do another one. but it's less episode and it's more money. Like, if you're gonna go out, man, go out swinging. So 15 episode order, he's only going to do 15 episodes. Does that mean they're going to do the regular 22 to 23 episodes and he's only going to be in 15 of them? Or does that mean we're actually going to use some of our fucking budget and condense it into 15 episodes? I hope it's only 15 episodes and he's getting $200,000 per episode, which feels very low to me. I really thought he'd be making more at this point. All I'm saying is, and this is nothing on him as an actor or his agent or anything. If I was on a show for 9 years and I was only now making $200,000 per episode, I would literally just say I'm fucking done. Like, I guess it's different for sitcoms, and I'm like, really? Some of these guys are making bank doing episodes, like $1 million an episode. If I'm in season 9 of my show and I'm only making $200,000, I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? I want to go make something better. So I seriously hope this show ends and Grant can get on with his life and do something better. Because I want him to succeed. He's the best Barry Allen we've seen in live action. Not that the competition is bad, most of it's pretty shitty. So it is cool to see that he's potentially getting a break after this, but he needs it, man. He really needs it. This CW, man, it's a workhorse, and it kills your creativity and it kills your drive, and eventually you're just on, your lifeline. So get out of there, man. Get out of there while the getting out's hot, dude. I really hope this final season, I hope this is the final season for you, because it sounds like it sucks. And also, our final piece of news, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, where we got like our first look at the Halo TV show. Well, we got an official trailer now, and as somebody who has never religiously played the games, I've only played co-op with some friends of mine. I do not know the lore. The lore, I couldn't give a shit about the lore. I'm not going to go read the books or play the games or anything. I'm going to watch the show, though, because there's money. There's money behind this, and it's money in the way that there was money behind Foundation on Apple, where it looks good, but the show could be complete shit. So I hope it works. Like, Master Chief is the lead character, which is important. If you want my honest opinion, and I think this is going to be missed, I really think this should have been The Mandalorian. And what I mean by that is standalone episodes of an overarching story. I don't think you should be world building hardcore when you do a Halo show. You should just establish that this guy is a tough elite soldier and he works for this place. He's doing missions and shit. It shouldn't kind of and maybe it is. Maybe I'm completely off base, but I don't really want the world to be fleshed out too much. Like, people who are going to watch the show already know what the game is. It looks good, though. I will say, I'm impressed with the budget. I'm impressed with the way it looks. Like, it's got money behind it, and that really surprised me. And it comes out on my birthday. So March 24th is when the first episode comes to Paramount Plus. I don't think I'll do weekly reviews of this show, but I could definitely see myself talking ad nauseum with a Halo fanatic about the show at some point. Maybe. We'll see what happens. I could definitely see myself talking about Halo, though. So Halo will be coming to the channel. Don't worry. I'll be talking about it at some point. I think it looks good. I am actually impressed with what we saw, and it's coming out sooner than I expected. So I was, honestly, at the beginning of the year, I was like, there's going to be nothing to watch or talk about this year. We're getting a lot of fucking shit, man, especially in March. Like, Taika Waititi's Pirate thing comes out in March. That show about the Lakers comes out then. I think the show about Uber comes out then, too. And that weird one, what's the one with Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway? That comes out soon, too. A lot of television, man. But that's all the news we got this week, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, let's jump into the world of rehashing old ideas, but making them kind of new for a new generation that might not know the old stuff. Movies. Movie magic, baby. That's all movies are, and I'll get into that in a bit. Well, everybody better get nice and comfortable, because we're doing another good old-fashioned GeekWave ramble. Because the other day, I had some spare time, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go see a couple movies that I didn't have any intention on seeing just because I don't care. But I had the time. I wasn't working on anything, so I'm like, you know what? I should see these. The discourse online for them has been fascinating to me. So I'm going to check it out. So the other day, I went to see The Matrix Resurrections, and I went to see the Scream 5 called Scream. And watching those two, not really back to back, but more like in a couple of days span time, it really put something into my mind. And I thought, I want to talk about this. So kind of what this video is going to be and what this entire episode is going to be is just going through, like, what is a requel? Like, why do we have these? What is the point? Because it's utterly fascinating to me. It is utterly fascinating to me that this is the well we keep going to. And I get it, but it's so annoying that we do it. And I know, okay, so the thing is, I know why we do it. As somebody who is well-versed in Hollywood, more so than the average person, not as much as some, I completely understand the need for a requel. And if you don't know, the idea of a requel is reboot, sequel. Basically, Scream actually says it really well. And when we get into like Scream and the Matrix for a bit here, I'll tell you why I think Scream does it better. But Scream kind of sets up the fact, like, you can't just have a reboot. You can't just have a sequel. You have to literally franchise this bitch off. And that's with everything. Half of the films in the theaters today are requels of some kind. We cannot just reboot a franchise anymore. We have to have the original characters come back, whether that actor or actress is 60, 70, 80, or 105. They have to come back. We cannot just, let things die. We have to have a reason for everything to exist. We have to have legacy characters. We have to have things matter. It sucks, honestly, but I don't hate the concept because it can be done well, which is weird to say, and it's just a lot, man. So let's talk about the requel. What is the best example of the requel? I don't know. I mean, you could look at any movie that made a lot of money in the past 4 years. And I'm not talking about like an MCU film or a Fast and Furious film. I mean, like, taking a property that existed, I think, before 2000 is the prime example of this. You look at things like that recent Shaft movie where it brought back everybody. You look at Jurassic World where it brought back everybody. Ghostbusters brought back everybody. Top Gun's going to do it this year. The Matrix just did it. Scream just did. Halloween just did it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre just did it. Everybody wants to get in on this requel. And I don't really understand what the necessity is for that. I mean, okay, this might just be personal, and again, I completely understand the need for that, but I've said this before, do we really need to see these old people come back in these roles? You know what, I'm going to change my I said no MCU film. I think No Way Home fits into this category. It's kind of a requel. Do we need to see these old people come back? I really think like the prime example of this in the modern context where it was like the biggest film of all time is really Star Wars The Force Awakens. I like that film a lot. I think it's enjoyable. It's got its flaws, but every Star Wars film is far from perfect except for The Last Jedi. That one is perfect. But to me, one of the things that doesn't interest me when it comes to making a new franchise or making a new movie in an existing franchise is the callback and the reference. Now, I watch a lot of sitcoms, I watch a lot of cartoons, and to me, those are the prime examples of when you should do a reference and a callback. Because it's cute, it's funny, this isn't supposed to be taken seriously. But when you're doing a big action movie with billions of dollars, do we really need to see a 70-year-old Harrison Ford running out every 10 seconds? Do we really need to have like the stupid jokes of R2 and Chewbacca and everything? Like, it works in a certain context if we're trying to make this world expansive and just part of the history. But sometimes it just gets to the point where you don't need to see this. And I think there's a couple examples where it works perfectly. To me, in the modern context of a requel, one of the best examples is Blade Runner 2049. I think that film knew exactly what it was trying to do. It had a clear message of what it was trying to say. And it's like, yeah, Deckard is a character in this world. We know what Deckard is now. We're answering that question. And we're showing how his world has changed pretty much from that perspective. And it works well because Deckard is not a character in the film. He's just a plot device. And to me, that works a little bit more. That can get kind of messy, though, and sometimes it doesn't really work out, like in the context of the Matrix, because in this new Matrix movie, I think Morpheus is used as a context. I mean, as just a callback and a device to advance the plot. It doesn't really add anything. Same with Jada Pinkett Smith's character. It's weird. And I know people are like, oh, Hollywood's out of ideas. Hollywood is not out of ideas. Hollywood has never been out of ideas. Here's the thing about Hollywood that some people don't need to know. Hollywood is under one branch, and that is we need to make money. You can be the biggest auteur in the goddamn world, but they will not give you the money to make your fucking movie if it's going to bomb. You know? Who cares? And that really has changed, especially since the boom of the 80s. And it's Star Wars, it's Jaws, it's Die Hard. Those things set off the train wreck that's coming to Hollywood in the future. But when you did the studio system, things were different. When you had the new age of filmmakers come in, things were different. You know, you were an auteur, you could make your thing. People would follow you and you'd have your cult following come in. And then suddenly the world changed and every movie was making a lot of money and you have to keep coming back to it and digging into that well. And that sucks. And I think people like to think that this started recently, you know, this idea of a requel. But the requel actually started pretty much since Hollywood's conception. Not only have we been remaking films like Sherlock and Robin Hood and Ben-Hur every other year, those films have always been being made. But to me, one of the earliest examples of the requel is Son of Kong. So you have your first King Kong movie. He's dead. Bada bing, bada boom. Couple years later, you gotta make another King Kong movie, but we killed King Kong. We want to set in the same universe. Well, we'll use existing characters who are legacies from the first one, but we'll also get a new character who's already connected to a legacy character called Son of Kong. Essentially, Son of Kong is just, we killed King Kong in the first movie. We need an excuse to bring him back in the second one. Let's give him a son. That's all it is. That's literally all that is. And that's a very early example of this. And there's other examples from that time period too. You know, The Last Picture Show has a sequel with the same characters, kind of getting us new ones. Every film kind of has that. Even Gentlemen Prefer Blondes has its ongoing that made a new thing. It's just really weird to me, especially when we look at modern cinema, because I hate to say it, and I don't know how to phrase this the right way. I think the modern cinema goer is an idiot. And I know, you listening to this podcast, you are not an idiot. Anybody who listens to a podcast on movies or actually talks about this stuff, I do not think you are an idiot. You are a fan of film and you view it from an analytical lens. So you see like, oh, this Predator movie called back this Predator movie. Oh, look, this Prometheus movie had to set up this thing in there. And I guess that's a prequel. We don't really want to get into that. And it's like, oh, look, Laurie's back in the Halloween movie. Why? Who knows? Just because we can't make these anymore without Jamie Lee Curtis showing up? It's weird to me. I will say it's kind of cool that these older actors could come back, but if it was me, and this is just me, if I did a movie this year, let's say I made my dream project and it was a great success and everybody loved it, it was critically acclaimed, I said, I'm not making a sequel. 40 years from now, you know, I'll be 60 something and they're like, hey, can you come back? We're going to spin off this thing you made and you're going to get a lot of money, but you're going to have to make a lot of the references you made back in the day. All those characters that you might have been feuding with at the time or all those people you might not have liked, they're coming back too. You're going to get a nice paycheck. I get it, but I don't want to do it. And that just might be the filmmaker in me just being like, I don't need to retread old ground that I've already touched on. But Hollywood doesn't care. Hollywood will take your old idea and they'll market it into something, whatever the hell they want to market it into. And that kind of worries me because when that becomes the biggest grossing film or the only films that are acceptable aside from like the cinematic universe and the prequel and the reboot, it sucks. And I want more independent films to get bigger and I want more independent films to make the budget that these have. And that's also the problem with these requels is that they are given the budget, they are given the money. Like you don't see any mid-tier films anymore. And that will lead us into another topic I'm going to do later, which I want to talk about. But the problem is cinema is focused on these characters you know. You can go to the cinema, you're like, oh, here's the next Indiana Jones movie. I remember that. He's afraid of snakes. Hey, here's Marion. She's back. It doesn't work. It gets so tiring. And you just feel so bogged down by the weight of it, and it just affects you so much. And I know I'm just kind of rambling on here, but there are good examples of it. But there's far and far few. I think in the modern context, like I said, it starts with The Force Awakens. And that's just because if we can get Harrison back, we could literally get any actor back for any role ever. If you could get the most curmudgeon-y man in the world to come back to the role that he despises, what is stopping you from getting anybody to come back for any of their performances? That is a lot, you know? I don't think it's a good a lot. It just leads you to just go, okay, this is tiring, this is painful. And I get it. I guess you could say from a fan's perspective, it's cool to see these characters again. Why does Stallone keep making a Rocky film? You know, people like this. Why does, Arnold sometimes come back to a Terminator film in a new continuity? It's kind of a requel because it's existing characters in a new legacy. Because it's cool, I guess. You got to commend Bruce Willis for literally saying, I'm not doing another one of these. I'll make Cosmic Sin or whatever. That's exciting. But it's just weird. And it kind of sucks. It's just exhausting. It is just so... I think it's so exhausting. Just because I get it. And there's some examples that just kill me. I think one of the ones that killed me the most was just the new Ghostbusters film. I didn't even watch it. Because I just knew... I don't care. I saw the marketing and the toys for it, and I'm like, I can't do this. I physically can't sit down and watch this thing. I'm not a Ghostbusters fan to begin with. I can't sit down in the theater and justify watching this scene when they CGI Harold Ramis just for the sake of it. I can't do it. I really just don't care enough about it. And I don't really care enough about some of the other movies I saw, too. I'm just like, these are so tiring, and they're so exhausting. Oh, Hollywood, why are you doing this, man? There is creative stuff in Hollywood. I will say, there is. But it's so much work. And now even the cinematic universes are doing it. Like, I did enjoy No Way Home. I did like it. I think it's an okay film, but it's a requel because you're rebooting the characters of Toby and Andrew. You're bringing in their villains and you're setting up a new status quo for those universes. Same thing's happening in DC with Michael Keaton coming back. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it kind of kills your creativity. It kills your drive because suddenly it's just all about the brand recognition as opposed to making an actual product. And that's been the case in Hollywood forever. If you have something that can make money, you make it into something that can make money again. And that kind of sucks. And because of that, there's things that do excite me, like that new take on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that's just called Bel-Air that's coming out soon. I think at the time of this video, it might be out, or in a couple weeks it's out. That's kind of exciting to me. Just because it's not trying to retread the same ground as the first one. It's like, no, this is a serious, dark take. We're going to show you the consequences of being a young man growing up in this neighborhood and what it means to be a person in that. I think that's really cool. I think that's a great idea. Then you just got things like, hey, you remember this from there? Hey, look, who's coming back? We literally just had that Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie come out. Guess who's back? Lady from the first one. Horror, I think, is a prime example of this. Bruce Campbell's really made a career out of just playing Ash until he's dead. But horror is kind of different to me, just because there is that final girl element to it that has to be intrinsically connected to every single piece of film. It can suck, and it can just like bog down the movie, but there's some examples where it works. Like, to me, the new Halloween films, they don't work. Just because... I don't know. I like Jamie Lee Curtis, but I don't think we need to see her still doing this battle. It does not work for me. Same with Scream, like Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox coming back to all of these. It's impressive, but really, guys, like, as a personality, you wouldn't want to try something new. You're not really acting like the character you did in the first one. I know Courtney really loved playing Gail in that first movie because it was a different type of role for her. But you're not doing anything in this new one. Like, you really just are portraying a certain type of thing. And that's weird. And it doesn't have that much going for it, which kind of sucks because it could have more going for it. It just doesn't. The requel. Hollywood, man. Like, I love it and I want to be a part of it so badly. But I just got to wonder, like, what would you even do? Like, what's the point in trying when everything you could do just gets made into this legacy thing? Like, I don't need to see an old Bill Murray coming back, I don't need to see that. It's exhausting. I don't need to see any of those people come back. Like, there's certain ones where I'm amazed they haven't tried it. Like Lethal. I guess they are making another fucking Lethal Weapon movie. I forgot about that. Yeah, Mel Gibson's coming back. Oh, man. They are doing that. I was like, oh, good for Mel Gibson. But no, he is doing another one of those. I guess Big Trouble in Little China. A lot of Kurt Russell stuff he hasn't come back for, which is surprising. But a lot of those other guys in that era. Arnold hasn't done a lot. He's mainly just done Terminator, which I get it. Like, that's the one that you're known for. He hasn't done like a Running Man or a Predator. He hasn't come back for those. But we do have another Predator movie every other year. I don't know if they're all connected, though. I don't think they are. Because what's the point? Like, it's Predator. They're good, they're bad, they're whatever. They're just Predator, and I get it. Like, you can't do anything with Predator. And I guess Alien's a weird example, too, because Alien, Covenant, and Prometheus are kind of set before that, but it is kind of a requel because it's rebooting the lore, and it's showing you new characters in it. Oh, what the hell is happening there? That shit's weird, man. And even so, I almost completely forgot about this. Look at television. Television's bad for this too, because why make a news show when we can just have And Just Like That or another Gossip Girl show up? Because why not? Why the hell not? If we can just take these things that already exist and put these people in a role, do it, man. Why the hell not? And this kind of is also something that bothers me. This actually irritates me to no end. Back in the day, like 60s, 70s, 40s, 50s, any fucking time you want, pretty much before the 80s, you could do any role you wanted. If you were a Dustin Hoffman or a Robert De Niro or, Jane Russell or any of these talented people of any decade in that time, you just make whatever you want. You want to do this? Oh, you're going to do that? Okay, you go to any of these roles, you do them. And you are not known as being one person. Nobody looks at you and goes, oh, look, there's Harry Potter. Oh, look, there's Venkman, You could just be anybody. You're like, oh, that's a good actor. Look at him. He's doing all these crazy stuff. Nowadays, you are typecast to one role. And that role is you forever. For better or worse, you are now essentially only allowed to be one person. And that freaking sucks. Like, for the rest of your life, even if you don't make another movie, let's look at Harrison Ford, for example. Even if he doesn't make another Indiana Jones or Star Wars, for the rest of his life, he's going to be asked the question, would you ever do another one of these? Would you ever want to get back in the hat and, put on that whip and ride down the whatever the fuck? For the rest of his life, as short as or long as it may be, he's going to be asked those questions. How many times do you think Sly got asked, like, you putting on the gloves one more time? Like, it's so much. And that just irritates me, especially somebody in a creative field who wants to explore his horizons and try new things. I would hate to be pigeonholed into one spot where you're just like, you're only this. You'll never escape this. People will know you as this one role, and that's the only role you'll be able to do. And I think that hurts more for television, because that doesn't mean you can expand into television and try new things. They'll just be like, hey, you want to come back for a Frasier reboot? Hey, do you want to come back for a Sex and the City revival? We'll never be able to grow or try new things like that, and it sucks. I think Sarah Jessica Parker, okay actress, give her more to do. Just don't make her do this again. It kind of sucks. She deserves more. We could do more of all this stuff. And everything I do say, there are examples of it going the other way where we do give new creative voices the chance to grow and do different things, but they're not the prominent shows anymore. They're not getting all the money. We're giving money to every movie that's something connected to this other thing and whatever. It's like, look at all the people come back for the next Jurassic Park. There's so many. There's just so much trauma and whatever the fuck going on in that film. It's kind of exhausting. And I just don't really give a shit about it, because why should I? I do like Sam Neill and Laura Dern, but they kind of told their story. I don't need to see them when they're 60. They're still doing this. I don't need to see it. We could literally sit here and list off every example of this coming out in the next couple of years. The biggest ones being Top Gun. Why not? Tom Cruise, he's back. He never left, but he's back. Indiana Jones 5 and whenever the hell that's going to be released. Yay, thanks for it. Avatar 2, I'm going to count, even though it's not from the 90s or the 80s. Just because it's been 12 fucking years, and who gives a shit at this point? Nobody cares about you, Avatar. Stop trying to matter. You just don't, babe. You just don't matter. So don't think you're special. There's just so many. And the requel, there are so many things about it that I understand why a general audience would like it. Characters you love, familiar names that you can understand and you know what you're going to get from it. You can get the references you love and enjoy. But if you are a fan of film and you want to see new and creative things, it can hinder that experience, because that money is being diverted from the independent film and being put into the next Ghostbusters, being put into the next Top Gun, being put into the next whatever you've already seen before, which does suck. I will say, Sometimes it can be good. Blade Runner 2049 is a great example of how you can tell a story in that world and make it new and original, still connected to what came before it. I think it's interesting. There's a lot of good examples of that, but in recent context, there's two films that play with this in a really fascinating way, and it's almost in a meta-narrative kind of way. So the first one is The Matrix Resurrections. Now, I don't know if I've talked about it a lot on this channel. I'm not a fan of The Matrix. I've never been a fan of that series. I think it's cool. I'm glad it exists. It exists in its own niche area over there. I really don't have any affirmation or care for it. So the idea of kind of requeling this film is literally like Matrix stuff happening in the Matrix. It's like the Matrix now exists inside the Matrix, which means everybody already knows the Matrix exists, so we don't have to beat around the bush that this is something that happened. We literally could just adapt what we already know and retell the same story as now that the Matrix is there. And that kind of sucks. And I really think Neo's journey in this movie is bad because he's literally just forgotten who he was, and he literally has the same arc where he comes back, but now it's kind of romantic with Trinity and everything. It's exhausting and stupid. It doesn't go anywhere. There are some good moments at the beginning where literally they say Warner Brothers wants to remake The Matrix. How do we do that? It's like, oh, we need the legacy characters, we need the bullet time, we need all this stuff to come back and make it work. That's a very bad interpretation of what The Matrix is. But it's interesting. I will never be I'm not going to be ever stumbling again because I'm just so fucking blown away that this movie exists. The Matrix Resurrections is one of the most interesting films I have seen in recent memory, just because there is no way it should exist. It just spits on its own creators. It's this weird metaphor for finding yourself again. It's an awkward attempt at being a reboot while still establishing yourself in a continuity cycle. It's just a weird metaphor. It's like, hey, time has advanced so much that nothing's really changed, so things are still as prestigious as you remember them from 60 years ago, but they're different enough? It's so weird to me. And there's a character called Bugs named after Bugs Bunny, and I think she's a metaphor I'm the next generation of movies. Look at me, once the Neo fails, it's the Bugs time. Yippity yippity, that's all, folks. That's a cynical way of looking at it, but I really think that's what it's going for, and that's kind of a weird feeling. And I did not like this movie at all. It kind of bummed me out, honestly, because I'm like, this could have been something. You really swang for the fences. I think this was just Lana that made this one. She really swang for the fences, and that was really cool because it's no, look, I'm going to say this, okay? Sony or New Line, I don't know if this New Line owned by Sony, whatever, Disney, nobody else is making this film. This is a strictly Warner Brothers film because it plays against itself in a beautiful way. But everything else is just a terrible attempt of trying to make yourself special. It tries to set itself up again. It's hey, these legacy characters matter to the story. How much? Not that much. But we have these new characters, so we could do stuff with them too. Look at us. We're the new generation, everything. We're Foe. We're Foe. We're fucking Pin. Fuck. Why am I messing this up? Poe, Finn, Rey, BB-8. We're all of them. We're all back, baby. Look at that. And with that, The Matrix Resurrections just fell flat. We recast Morpheus as a young guy. Doesn't work. But then we got to Scream, the 2022 version. And I think this worked better. Mainly in the context of Scream is not intentionally supposed to be a brilliant film. It is satire from the get-go. But what makes it brilliant to me is the way it talks about the requel, which is you have to have the characters return or nobody's going to give a shit. Do you remember when we rebooted Fantasy Island and nobody gave a shit until we said tattoo at the end? Yeah, that is why we have to have Nev Campbell come back, why we have to have Deputy Dewey come back, why all these fucks have to come back for this film. It worked really well. And this also has a weird stance on toxic fandom, which I adore to see because, yes, toxic fandom exists. Films have terrible people that support them, especially when you are making a requel, when you are making something based off an established IP that has a history and a legacy. The fans are terrible and toxic, and they will ruin it and distort it in different ways. And to me, Scream handled that perfectly, where it literally calls out The villain of the picture, and of all pictures essentially, is toxic fandom ruining the idea of a requel. And that's the part too. People will get mad when you try to cast a new lead. Why not we just see 70-year-old Han Solo running around? Why do we have to see Rey, Finn, and Poe? Because you can't have that all the time. You have to let things grow and move on. Look at what you're doing with Boba Fett now. You're like, this guy was cooler when he just died and fell in a pit. No, he wasn't. Giving characters arcs and allowing them to grow and mature is better than just having these characters be 65 in the real world, still making the same jokes they made 30 years ago. You have to let these things grow, and you have to let them move on, and I think Scream just handled that perfectly. It talked about that in a really mature and understanding way that I really adored and admirated, and I think it was important to see. Out of those two, they both deal with like the meta-narrative of what it means to be a filmmaker and making something based on an already established IP, but Scream said, no, this is supposed to be stupid and silly and bad. We should talk about it that way. And Matrix was like, nah, fam, we're serious, we're hardcore. People will get us no matter what we do. You're in your own ass again, Lana. Like, it happens, I get it. But in terms of a requel, you failed, Scream didn't. And that is just super impressive to say that a Scream movie did better than a Matrix film in presenting its argument. Which is that surprising? Not really, actually. Most of the Screams are good. Yeah, they're not bad, I guess. Better than Halloween. Better than the modern Halloweens. I will say that. They are definitely better than those. Oh, man. There's just so much shit, isn't there? So much shit. And I'm just tired of it all. Kinda. I'm excited for certain things. But at the same time, I'm really not. And this is kind of the thing that worries me about like Multiverse of Madness. Where I'm like, please don't show me, all these characters again. I don't need to see Patrick Stewart or Hugh Jackman. They had their story. Please don't bring them back. They're like 100 years old. I don't need to see it. Some people want that because it's important, but I'm like, you still could have told a great Spider-Man story without Toby and Andrew in there. You could have done it without Alfred and Willem. You could have done it without all of them. You could have told a great story. But the fact that you did that kind of made it a certain type of film. It made it a requel. So, final thoughts on the requel. Okay, before I continue and just kill myself with this topic. It's harmful to movies because it takes interesting ideas and corrupts them with the idea of legacy, the idea of reference, and the idea of bringing back old shit. That sucks. Sometimes you can do something special when you use like this idea as a device as opposed to the narrative structure. It's interesting that way. But overall, I cannot say I like the requel. There are good examples of it being used right, like Scream where it makes fun of it, like Blade Runner 2049 where it's like a joke. Well, no, Scream's the joke. Blade Runner 2049 is like it's serious, but it's kind of in a joking way that we're using Deckard here. That's when it's good. When it's used bad is when every part of your movie becomes trying to recall what that other thing was, just so you, the audience, know that we're making another one of these. I think a prime example of that issue is The Expendables, even though those aren't real films. They're literally just a scheme to launder money for Wesley Snipes. So, the requel. Do you love it? Do you hate it? I certainly hate it. I certainly don't love it. And as always, I do like to end things with a couple recommendations for you guys. And I'm like, what's a good requel to watch? Well, check out Son of Kong. Watch the first King Kong, of course, and then watch Son of Kong, because you'll get an understanding of like where Hollywood went wrong. And that was it. That's where Hollywood went wrong. You could check out the Halo video games. Those are pretty fun. There's an IP we're going to do a lot with. We're going to milk that till it's dry. Blade Runner 2049, fantastic film. And the new Scream. It's actually surprisingly good, so I do recommend checking that out. It's going to surprise you in ways I don't think you'll be expecting. And guys, thank you so much for listening to me ramble about requels for a bit. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support. And coming up in the month of February, I think we're going to do the month of the Bat. So hang on to that. Hang on to your butts. The Batman stuff is on the way. Now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. If you are listening to this on the podcast feed, please give us a rating over there. It's definitely something that helps out the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And we'll catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck. And remember, if they reboot us in 30 years, don't blame me. I voted for Kodos.